Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
This is Write Smarter, Not Harder, a No Red Ink experience. And I want to introduce Ryan Lett at this time. I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. As you mentioned, I am Ryan Lett, and we'll be talking today about No Red Ink, which is a platform that is dedicated to unlocking every writer's potential. This platform is a comprehensive writing platform that has content from grades 3 through 12. And it's a digital tool that supports the development of strong writing habits and critical thinking through simplified and supported instruction. Let's go ahead and move forward and talk about our objectives in our brief time that we have today. So much to cover. So one is to understand the main features and functionality of No Red Ink. And then two is to complete the first two steps of establishing your teacher account. So let's jump into the features and talk about the first free features of No Red Ink. So yes, you can create an account with No Red Ink for free. And as I mentioned, it's a comprehensive writing platform, again, with content from grades 3 through 12. And as you see on the screen, it has multiple features, including diagnostics covering writing and grammar skills, writing prompts, and even some guided writing. In addition to that, there's adaptive practice. It covers writing and critical thinking, revising, and even a really nice comprehensive support depot for teachers. There is premium content. As you see here, many of the features are marked as limited. For example, there are over 1,000 plus different skills, 2,500 different prompts, 400 plus guided draft prompts. That's their full library of skills and prompts. But when it's limited, it's on the free account. So there's a certain number of those that you get access to. But anything that is premium content is going to be identified through this yellow flag here. So when you're searching through the library, you'll easily be able to identify something that is premium content. But even with that, there's so much access in the free account that it still makes this a really useful tool for the classroom. Another temporary free tool and free access is the AI feature. For a limited time, No Red Ink is giving access to all the free accounts to the premium tools of a grading assistant and Originality Insights. And so the grading assistant is an AI-powered tool that evaluates the student writing against a range of rubric items, and then it suggests scores and it gives tailored written feedback. And the idea with this is that as teachers, you'll be able to assign more writing, and there's a richer feedback and more efficient grading, a definite tool in your tool belt when it comes to giving that feedback and grading multiple assignments and essays and things like that. The Originality Insights really is just going to give you insight into the student's writing process and identify any potential areas of plagiarism. These are free until they say they're not. They're trying to give access until further notice. And then once they decide that they don't want to have it to be free anymore, they'll of course notify users and then it'll become part of a premium package. But while the access is there, it is an excellent tool, and we'll take a look at that here in a moment. The assignments. So in No Red Ink, there is this very in-depth, comprehensive assignment library. You can search the assignment library by collection. You can search by the different assignment type. There are 3 assignment types that are practice, writing, or assessment. In addition to that, you can search through a keyword search. So type in maybe what you're looking for. And with the assignments, you can customize the assignments. So some of the customizations include setting start dates and due dates, assigning the assignments to either whole class, small groups, or specific individuals. And you can also set activities as a practice, a quiz. You can assign a point value, and you can also customize the writing prompts. So, lots to do here in this assignment library. Another feature is the text-to-speech feature. So in this feature, students can have certain instructions or exercises read aloud to them. And then as teachers, you're able to enable or disable that feature for students, or students can also adjust this preference. And once they're logged into their account and they go to account settings, they can change whether they want to have that feature on or not as well. Adding students to your class. So ease of access is a fairly easy process. So when you create a class in No Red Ink, it automatically generates a class invite link and the class code that you can share with your students to have them join your class. A lesser use option is to manually add students. And so you would use this option if for some reason your students are unable to create their own accounts. You would manually add them to your class roster, and then you would provide them with their username and their password so then they can then log in and have their individual accounts. 3 ways that they can join, but the invite link, URL takes them directly to the class, or they can create their account and of course join by typing in the correct class code. Very easy for students to get access. Once students do have access to the class and they're creating their individual accounts, the very first thing that they do is to customize their interest. The purpose of this, and it is required for them to move forward in establishing their account, is that they want the students to have interest in what they're reading. So when they're working in the different prompts, working with sentences and paragraphs and things, based on their interests, it's going to include those names. So for example, some of my interest selections included Steph Curry, Tyra Banks, the movie Despicable Me. So as I was doing my practice sentences, I saw sentences and paragraphs that were about some of the characters from Despicable Me or talking about Tyra Banks. So it really tries to make it of interest to students. And of course, because the platform is more geared towards K-12, you do see some more, let's say, family type movies like, Minions, The Shrek, and Despicable Me. But also there are other topics there like actors, sports, pets, other interests, and things like that. So it could definitely still apply to the adults that we're working with. And even once the student has established their account, they can go back and change or update their interests in the future. So it's not a permanent thing, but they must complete this step first. Once they're into their account, there is support for the activities that they are working on. This is just an example of what support would look like. So on the left side of the screen, you're seeing a prompt that the student has worked on, and they got an incorrect answer. And so it's telling them to try again, and that when you answer 2 questions in a row correctly, you'll be able to continue. Well, on the right-hand side of the screen, it might be a little bit small, but just showing that the student got an answer wrong again. So now it's giving them even more support and giving them an example and a chart of how to use the formulas. So it's giving them more support to help guide the student to the correct answer. And then once the student receives the correct answer, it's celebrated in the platform, like, yay, way to go, just one more to go. So really helping keeping them motivated. And again, they have that supported instruction as they're working through an activity independently. Working in this platform, I did want to point out that there are some digital literacy skills that students will need to have in order to work successfully on this platform. So one is definitely email address and or username and password management. So no matter how they're logging in, whether it's through email or whether you've created username and passwords for them, they will have to manage that, right? And so even with the manually created login, once the students log in the first time, they have to create their own password. So just kind of keeping that in mind in terms of students. Their mouse skills, they'll need to know things like drag and drop, how to highlight and select text. And then, of course, typing. If you're going into the writing part, the essays, editing, things like that, they'll definitely have to know their typing skills. So just kind of something to keep aware of in terms of the digital literacy skills when you're thinking about your group of students and what you need to do to prepare them to get onto this platform. Along with that is the mobile compatibility. We always have to think about the access that our students have. This platform does not have an app, but it can be accessed through the device browser. Now, according to their website, they say that they do not support iPhone and Android, but I have an iPhone, and through Google Chrome on my iPhone, I was able to log onto the platform and successfully complete the activities. And it looked just like what I did when I was on the computer. So there was no difference. Maybe depending upon the newness of the user's device and things like that, they may experience some trouble. But according to their website, and especially on like iPad devices, the browsers are fully supported. So Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, they're all supported on those devices. And it's definitely optimized for computer usage. I would say that as well. Again, some things to think about in terms of mobile compatibility.
As far as the functionality on using a mobile device, since you have to go through the internet browser, are they able to see the activities and then the questions and answers? Is it going to be probably scrolling up and down, right? But they'll be able to see it as well as they would on a bigger screen?
Yes. So one thing that I did notice was, especially at the end when it was giving me like diagnostic report, like how I did, I had to turn my phone horizontally. Maybe practicing with the students, if they're going to be accessing this platform mobily, maybe practicing in class, turning your phone horizontally to see if that gives them the space that they need. Yes, you would have to scroll. So like when I showed the example of the student feedback, that was a fairly long page. So if they're looking at that on their mobile device, then yeah, they would have to scroll up and down to read all of that feedback. And next, we're going to go right over into the actual website. So let's look at some of the features that we just talked about and a little bit more. When you first log in, after you've created your teacher account, this is what your dashboard will look like. So every time you log in to your teacher account, it will automatically land you on your dashboard where you can get a quick view of what's going on. This is my demo class, and you'll see here the name of it, TNT demo class, my Tech and Tell demo class. So far, I have some assignments that I have assigned to class and students, and I can see how many of my students have completed that diagnostic. So right now there's 2 students in this class and both students have completed the diagnostic. You can also see some other shortcuts here, and we'll look at these just in a moment. Across the top, the same things that you can access from the dashboard, you'll see these links on the screen as you go through the different pages. So you can access all of this information by using the links at the top as well. Assignments, student data, browsing and assigning assignments. And again, as I mentioned, we have access to that free AI tool. It's letting me know that once you create your teacher accounts, you'll continue to see that message encouraging you to use that grading assistant and get familiar with that AI tool and using that in your classroom. The first thing we're going to look at is managing classes. When you create your account, one of the first things you do is actually create a class. You just add the new class, you name it, and then you can identify potential grades or other, and then click Add Class. And then once you do that, it's going to create the join link or the class code. So here's my class code. And if I need to share the link with students to join the class as well, I can do that to share the link. You can also add a co-teacher, which is really helpful feature, especially if you are co-teaching or if you're sharing a class with students. If you're building with someone else, this is great so that you guys can build together and make a more comprehensive, activities and things like that. So if you have a co-teacher, you can add them to a particular class if you need to. You can manage other features for your students from here. For example, resetting passwords. So again, that password management, it becomes crucial. So I'm sure at some point students will come and say, I can't get in, can't remember my password. And you have the ability to reset them or remove students that are no longer in your classroom, or edit a student if they need to maybe change the name or something like that. You can do all of that from here. So that's managing the classes. So if we go back to our dashboard, the next thing you would want to do is, once you have created your class and maybe added students to your class, you want to go to create an assignment. So let's look at the assignments. In our assignment library, as I mentioned, you have 3 different ways that you can search, and there are 3 different assignment types. So there's practice assignments, writing assignments, and then assessments, which would be like a diagnostic. And you can search this library based on the different collections. You can search again based on the assignment type, and you can search based on content. For example, if I wanted to look up punctuation and what assignments do they have on punctuation, and you'll see the additional search feature here is that I can now search by grade level. So if I'm looking for punctuation on maybe an elementary grade level and see what activities that they have, I can change the grade level and then see. So these are all the results. If I'm looking specifically on something for them where it's a practice activity, I can even filter it down further. Or if I'm looking for a writing activity based on punctuation, I can filter it that way as well. So you have multiple ways that you can look at an activity, and then, of course, click on it if you found the one of interest. And as I mentioned before, anything that is premium is going to be identified by this orange flag. And where there is no orange flag, you can assign. So you'll see there's some activities here, for example, under identifying conjunctions, that I can assign. I can preview the topic. So if I'm not sure exactly if this is what I'm looking for, I can preview the topic to see what it's about. And then it's going to open up another tab. And this is essentially kind of what the student would see as they were going through this particular activity. So you have the preview, and then you also have where you can actually view the lesson. If that's the one that you want, you're going to select it, and then you can assign it. Here, as I mentioned, you can assign activities as practice, as quiz, even as a diagnostic, and you'll do that here through this drop-down box that's at the bottom in the blue ribbon. So I can assign it as a practice activity. I can assign it as a quiz. So maybe this is something that we've been covering in class, and this is another way that I want to quiz my students on it. Or if I want to assign it as a unit diagnostic, however you want to use it in your class, you'll choose that. And then you'll click the arrow to continue. And now you can set things like certain start date, or is it right away? As soon as I click assign, it's right away. Is there a due date? You can put even a time on that due date, make a name for that assignment as you choose. And if you want to assign a point value to that assignment. And even if you allow late submission. So even though there's a due date, if you allow them to submit it late, you can select or unselect that box and then click assign. And here, if I don't want it assigned to the entire class, you can choose specific students maybe that need this activity, and maybe only Ryan Aylett needs that. Strawberry Shortcake doesn't need it, or the whole class needs it, however, and then you click assign. So let's go back, because you want to see the one creating a new assignment as a quiz. So the same thing, I'm going to go back to punctuation. Let's do a practice. The practice activities are the ones that you can assign that way. The writing ones look a little bit different. So here we go, identifying themos, and assign as quiz this time. So the last one we did, we assigned it as a practice activity. Now this time we're going to do it as a quiz. Click our blue arrow to continue. And same features. Do you want it to start? Do you have a due date? What you want to name it? But now here you have the option to determine how many questions that you want on this particular quiz. And then also, if you want to scramble the questions. So you have a couple more features to personalize or customize that quiz. And again, allowing late submissions if you want, and then the total point assignment. So if I want, 25 questions, I want this quiz to be worth 100 points. I don't want any late submissions, and scramble the questions. However you want to customize it. And again, you can choose if it's whole class or small groups within your class, you can select who you want to assign this to, and then give it a name and assign that quiz. We'll pop over to the writing activities. So we're going to create a new assignment again, and this time we're going to look at the writing. You have different types of writing activities. So if you want to build that daily writing fluency, they have some daily writing prompts, different genres, things like that. You have your quick writes, and then you can browse the prompts to see if there's a prompt there that you would like to choose for a quick write, or you can create your own. Either way, they are both customizable. And then the guided draft, same thing. You can create your own, you can browse the prompts, and then you can determine the level of scaffolding that you want for that particular assignment. So I'm going to go over here to the guided draft first, and we're going to create our own essay. So you would type in your prompt. You have the ability to add sources. If you are working and there's a source, an article that you want students to read in association with this prompt, you can add those sources here, and you can choose the genre, all of that, and then customizing even the rubric. If you want to edit this, you can customize what you want on that, or choose the type of genre it is. If it's a literary analysis, so maybe there's something that you've been reading as a class. If it's a narrative, again, all of these features customizable when you're doing the assignment or the guided draft. Let's go back to the other type for the quick writes. So again, very similar, customizing on the quick write. You put your prompt in there. Again, if there's a source that you would like to attach to that, you can set a word minimum for this one. So how long do you expect it to be? It's something just brief, maybe one paragraph, however. And then you can choose to have it graded based on word count. Use the grading assistant. So using that AI tool, or a manual grade, if you plan to come back and read them and give them that grade later, you can do that as well. Or even a rubric-based scoring. So teaching students about rubrics and how to use them. This is a great way to incorporate that into your lesson to kind of build on that writing fluency and working with the rubric. Like I said, if you're looking at the prompts on either side, any of the prompts that you like to use or assign, you can search again by grade level, something that applies more to your specific class. And then you can assign that particular quick write activity or prompt activity, and again, customize it as you see fit. If we go back to our dashboard, you have these shortcuts. You can also view your No Red Ink platform as a student would in your class. For my class, obviously, I've created some assignments I've put in there, like the ones that we just made for conjunction practice or punctuation quiz. So from a student perspective, I can see how my students would see their platform, what they would experience, what they would do. You can actually go into the activities and do them just so that you can get a good feel from the student perspective. And once you're done, you can return back to your teacher dashboard so that you can, of course, manage your teacher account. It just shows the estimated time to complete. There is not a time limit that you can set in the quiz. I think it gives an estimation based on the number of questions that it will ask. Looking at the data of your class. So your students are doing all of the assignments, but you want to see what data they are working on. And so you can do that as well to go into it. So for example, I'm looking at the diagnostic. I can see how my students did in terms of the class performance, even the item analysis itself, kind of going item by item, and even looking at the response that the individual student gave for that particular questions. Lots of data that you can review regarding your student data, regarding your assignments, their progress. And so you can see kind of things that have been completed or not. You can also create writing portfolios. So again, if you're having students doing daily writes or free writes or practicing their essay writing, however, building that portfolio so that they can actually track their growth in their writing as well. Using the data to kind of guide you in what to assign or how the students are doing is of course helpful. That helps make this tool even more specific to the individual needs of each class, each student, and each teacher. So that's pretty much a walkthrough of the platform. Let's have you now start working on creating your teacher account. Just going to go over what it looks like to create a teacher account, and then you guys can go ahead and use that link to create that account. So what happens is you'll go to noradeinc.com and you'll click sign up, and you're going to choose your preferred method for logging in, and you're going to sign up as an educator. Make sure you choose educator because there is not a way to toggle between a student account and an educator account. Choose your preferred method for logging in. So for example, if you want to log in through Gmail or what have you, you'll do that. It's going to ask you a couple of demographic questions. One of the questions being, what organization or school are you associated with? For me, the easiest answer to that question is to choose the homeschool parent, because coming from where I was at a nonprofit, well, that nonprofit school was not in there. Or if your organization is not in there, it becomes kind of a hassle, I would say, or trying to create your own school. Just click homeschool parent, and all it asks you is for the city and state. So that's the easiest way. But if you're in a school system that happens to be in there, feel free to choose that option. You'll answer number 3, the demographic questions, and then it will take you directly into creating your first class. And you can name it as an actual class that you plan to use this platform with. You can name it as a practice class, however you like, and you can skip adding any students for now. So we're going to do those first 4 steps of going to No Red Ink, clicking sign up, and then completing the steps 2, 3, and 4 to create your first class. So I'm going to have you all go over to No Red Ink. You can do this from any device that you're on, and this will be a good idea to experience, especially if you happen to be using a mobile phone, what the usability is like, the mobile compatibility. But you should definitely be able to create your teacher account from a mobile device. Once you're on No Red Ink's website, this is what it will look like. And again, you're going to click sign up. I'm an educator, so choose that you are an educator. And then how you would like to log in. So if you have a Clever account and you want to use it, if you have a Google account, if you have ClassLink, that's all depending upon your circumstances, or if you have a different email address, choose how you would like to create your account, and then select that option and go forth with the next steps, 3 and 4, of answering the demographic questions and creating your first class. I'm just going to talk you through the next 2 steps. So once you have created your first class, it's going to ask you what you want to do, and you're going to explore your dashboard and then browse the activity library to create an assignment. Once you have completed creating your class, creating your account, you've created a practice class or a class that you're going to use, go to explore your dashboard and browse the activity library to create an assignment. And you may not get to fully assigning an assignment because of all of the customizations, but at least get to where you are browsing and identifying an assignment you would like to use or assign to your class to create that assignment. So hopefully you've all at least had a chance to review an assignment that you're interested in, if not actually assign that assignment. Can you go back later and sync classes from Google Classroom? Yes, you can go back and add those students from Google Classroom. If you happen to use Google Classroom with your particular classes, you can sync it so that way you pull that roster over to No Red Ink. Again, on the premium side, there's some additional integrations, but yes, you can definitely sync it. And I believe the same thing is for if you use, I think it's Clever, kind of the same thing where they can pull that roster over if you're establishing a class. You can do that. And if you can't do it on the one that you practice with, I mean, you can always establish a new class and do it at that initial class setup, but you should be able to go back and sync that Google roster with your class that you've created. Try to add new students now. Where do I go? Yeah, so when you're in manage classes, you're on your dashboard, you go to manage classes, and under manage classes, you go to that class and you can add students. If we go back over to our teacher dashboard, and we're here with manage classes. For my Tech Intel demo class, click add students. And that's where I would add the students, either the link or sharing my class code, or if I need to, I can manually add students by clicking this link as well, create their usernames.
Still don't see add student button under manage class. Let's go back and do that again.
Okay, so let's make sure. So we've gotten to our dashboard and then we're clicking manage classes. Hopefully you should see it under the practice class that you created or whichever class that you just created for when you're creating your account. So add students should be under the class. If somehow you didn't create a class, maybe that's why you're not seeing that add students, but it should have had you create a class on your initial steps of the setup. But that's where it would be. Hopefully you see that on the screen. So making sure that you created a class and then under the class that you created, click add students. The thing is, I manually added a student. So just to get the practice of adding, a student into the class, I manually added one, and you would click this link where you says, my students are unable to sign up for their own accounts. Otherwise, if you actually had your class of students here in front of you, you would share with them either the invite link or you would share with them the class code so that they can then join the class. That's why it looked a little different. So yeah, when you're initially setting it up, you can practice manually. Like I added strawberry shortcake to my class just to practice manually adding a student to my class. Or you can again use the other two methods. Thinking about your experience today, what made you choose the assignment that you selected and how do you plan to implement it? So what are your ideas for implementation that you have or have come to you during this session or while you were exploring and reviewing this site?
Run-on sentence, and I like the practice. Very interesting topic, great for use in GED classes. The creation of content.
I teach GED and my students are at different levels. It shows diagnostics to individualized assessments for each student. Quick writing, yes, will be great using the essay writing for GED students. Some additional thoughts I had just in line with what you guys shared was that the writing support and the practice for the HSE students when preparing for that GED test, that essay writing. So multiple ways that you can use those essay writing functions and customization to kind of go along with the expectations of the essay and the GED test. Again, extra practice because you can assign point values to the different activities. And we all like some incentives. If you happen to have some kind of incentives, incentivize the point collection of them completing extra activities in No Red Ink. And again, for small group practice, maybe not everybody needs practice on a certain skill, but then you have this small group practice that you can assign and work with students as well.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.